Hi, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 13th of September. God, time flies. And boy, has it been a busy week. I held off for a couple days after Charlie Kirk's assassination to comment any further on this. First, I may have been wrong. Sorry about that. Still have allergies. Ragweed. We got ragweed back in the 40s, in the late 40s, with the corn imports from the U.S. It's got a much nicer name in Russia. It's called ambrosia. It's still ragweed. So I may be wrong because I said, we probably will never know who really shot Charlie Kirk. Now they've got some guy. Again, though, if you're looking at it, I mean, he's from the picture. He's not carrying a weapon with him when he's in this picture, so I don't know how they exactly decided it was him. And the guy, apparently his parents got him to surrender. And this is a former university student that then went, was in college as an electrician, from a conservative family. It's not the type of biography that you think radical leftist. Plus, he wasn't really active in any kind of movements or anything like that. And it just seems to fit these stereotypes of the guy that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, decides to go shoot somebody. Which really doesn't normally happen. People work up to something. True, internally, there's a Russian saying, "В тихом болоте черт заводится." In the quiet swamp, devils dwell. It's the quiet ones that, the mass murderers, the serial killers. You never hear about my neighbor, the serial killer, is having massive parties all the time, bashes and doing keg stands. No, it's the guy that was quietly sitting there eating his boyfriend or whatever, chopping up some women. That's the stereotype. I mean, that's not the stereotype. That's the type of people that become serial murderers and also take radical actions. Then you go down that list of why they would take radical actions, because whatever is in their heads, and then you look out for a little further, and then you see what kind of social contracts they had with, basically who they were spending their time with. For example, the old guy who was a security guard that shot Fitzo, his wife was Ukrainian. And she tried to make a run for the border, and by the way, all their Facebook posts and everything else all got wiped after she got arrested. Right, yeah. You got to think of that. So, and you wonder why all of a sudden some nobody that hasn't taken any kind of radical action decides to go take massive radical action like that. I mean, saying you see all these leftists saying, "Yeah, I would have killed him." No, you wouldn't have. You're just a boastful little twat saying that, but you wouldn't have. But this guy, out of the blue. Now, Kevin Mikalidze, who's been a guest on my show several times, he used to work DOD, CIA contractor, and they did social engineering via the internet, via social media. And he told me that, he didn't participate in this, but there were groups that were there online, preparing people. They were working them over to get when the prime time when it was needed to get them out there and become a shooter. That's not to say that all these mass shootings are something that CIA does. A lot of it's done. The vast majority of it is people doing it themselves, and they're usually doing it themselves because they're popped up on antidepressants and other drugs and things like that, and they've been told God doesn't exist and you have no purpose in life, and blah and blah and blah. And amazingly, that creates people that go do things like that. But having that in there already, when you can manipulate weak-minded people online through social media, purposely manipulate them, and then send them out to do that. That's something that governments or maybe big corporations do. That's not something that small people do. I mean, IGIL, that Islamic terrorist organization, they were doing that. Or at least they had some service that was doing that actively. You saw young women, including from Russia, that were going off to be brides for these IGIL psychopaths, and they're psychopaths themselves now. And a lot of countries correctly didn't want them to come back in. Sorry, you can stick around where you dug your grave. You can lay in it now. But So you have this point. All of a sudden, this guy pops up and it just takes the shot. And then it's going to come out, watch, it'll come out that he's never fired a rifle before in his life or something like that. He just took the rifle and went fire. Yeah, it's also funny, Russia is so mentally disarmed as far as having weapons. And I am pro-gun rights. I am absolutely pro-gun rights. That's my biggest gripe with the Russian government is the gun rights here now are stricter than they were in the Soviet Union. Never mind that under the tyrant, the way the leftists described the czars, under the czar tyrants, people could own whatever they could buy. You want to buy a small cannon and carry and then pull it behind you? It's your thing. People were well armed. People carried they could carry knives, guns, whatever. And societies actually, in an ordered society actually becomes less violent because the criminals are afraid. I did a paper on this in I don't remember what class it was in the U.S. And there was a statistical, interesting statistical summary in Florida that 2 counties where the violent crime rates were 36% above U.S. average. I mean, you're talking very violent counties. In both, the county administration took a position that all registered citizens or residents of that county who were allowed to had to buy and own a pistol. Not a long barrel, but a pistol. They didn't have to carry it. They didn't have to ever use it, but they had to own it. Within 2 years of this happening, the violent crime rates were 18% below national average. That's a 54% drop in 2 years. Why? Because everyone's armed. And the criminals are cowards for the most part. And if they're not cowards, they're probably drugged up psychopaths that are going to kill everybody anyway, so you might as well whack them as they're trying to break into your house. Now, of course, Russian houses are a hell of a lot harder to break in. Double pane glass windows, steel doors are pretty much the norm. And if they're not steel doors, they're heavy wooden doors that you'd have to take an axe to and diligently work at. You're not, and the walls, you couldn't even hang these kinds of doors on a modern American house because the plywood wouldn't be able to handle that kind of weight on it, realistically speaking. Or the plywood and the frame. The frames, the 2x4s are really about 1.8 by 3.4 by 4s. They're all much thinner than they're supposed to be, but that's a modern American house. Big wind comes, big house fly away. Big water comes, big house float away. The modern American house, where it just rots, especially with termites. By the way, Russia, interestingly enough, I thought they did, but Russia doesn't have termites except in the very south, which is interesting because Canada has termites. But termites in Europe only live, the varieties of termites only live in the south. Now, we've got other insects that'll chew up wood pretty damn well. Karayede. Oh, those things are insane. I had my attic redone, had wooden boards put up on my attic to keep the insulation up because the attic's not finished. And it wasn't treated wood, and I went up to the attic, and you can hear burrowing. It's almost like rats burrowing everywhere because these things hatched that were in the bark or underneath the bark, and they got around to all the boards. And there's that fine powder that's left from the wood, like termites leave, and it was everywhere, the dust. So I had to pay for guys to go up there and gas the whole attic and kill them all off. They did a good job of it. So anyways, boy, did I just go off on a tangent. So there's that. But what really hit me in this, and I mean, just America's done. Let's just begin with this. There is, outside the U.S. dollar, there wasn't that much unifying America, if we're going to talk reality. At first there was, but by the late 1800s, you didn't have a unified, you didn't have a unified racial group. No, whites are not a unified racial group, just like blacks aren't, and so on, because there's lots of different nationalities. Now, blacks in the U.S. were a more unified racial group because their nationalities, their tribal allegiances were all stripped from them when they became slaves. For those blacks that were slaves, there were black slave owners too. If you don't believe that, go read. Go read a little bit of actual history. But for the most part, you know, that's an exclusion because they literally had their tribal affiliations ripped away from it. Hispanics, you try calling a Cuban or an Argentinian or a Peruvian a Mexican, they're ready to beat your face in. I mean, that's fighting words for them right there. So they still keep their affiliations. Their tribal level affiliations. So do whites, Irish, Germans, so on. Sure, to some degree they all do mix in the U.S., but especially in these smaller towns, in the cities it's one thing. The cities are usually more or less a melting pool, except New York, which still has Hell's Kitchen, Italian quarters, and so on and so on. Where all the immigrants were divided up by their racial groups. They've still got Brighton Beach with the Russians and so on. The small towns are still oftentimes very ethnic. Very ethnic. So religion's obviously not a unifying factor in America because you've got 10,000 versions of Protestantism, you got Catholicism, you got Orthodoxy, and even Orthodoxy, you got representatives of every single Orthodox patriarchy in the U.S. And while they're friendly to each other, they're still competing with each other for adherence. And then you got all the other religions, so that's not an issue. So you got economics as the base issue. But you're looking at these people, I won't say all the left and all the progressive liberals, because heavy left and liberals are not the same thing. The Soviets, who were leftists, I'm talking past 1920s, where homosexualism and pedophilia, anything goes as long as you come fight for the Soviets. By 1928, everything changed into family, family, family. And if you actually look at the Soviets, especially when Stalin came in, because Stalin had been in seminary to be a Orthodox priest, so he understood Orthodoxy, and he made a lot of things in the Soviet Union that looked like the Orthodox Church minus God. And after after 1942-41, he actually supported the church. In fact, the seat of the Patriarchy was rebuilt after demolished by the Soviets. It was rebuilt by the Soviets, by youth organizations, Komsomolets. They were sent to help rebuild it. Stalin gave out 17 awards of a hero of the Soviet Union, the civilian awards, to 17 priests that kept their churches going all through the siege of Leningrad because they kept the morale of the people up. Things changed. That's something the West doesn't want to talk about. But if you look at the Soviet Union, they were leftist. Economically, they were very leftist. Absolutely. No denial in that. But socially, they were actually very conservative. They were very right-wing, if you call it that. They weren't ultra-nationalist, racist, but they were nationalist. In an inclusive concept, because Russia Slavs are 86% of the population, but the other 14%, 180 other ethnic groups that are native to the lands in the Soviet Union and Russia. Well, that's statistics actually for Russia. The Soviet Union is a little bit different statistics, but still. And plus, we got Germans and others that are, by the way, returning now. Russian Germans, or German Russians, whatever you want to call them. And so on, that made their homes in the Russian Empire, Soviet Union, and present-day Russia. There was even an Italian colony west of Stalingrad, Volgograd, or if you want to use the old name, Tsaritsyn, that from the 1960s. So Italian communists. So Russia's always been that way, but the Soviet Union was actually really conservative. So the revolutionary Marxists are pretty liberal, and the woke crowd in the U.S. And you got to figure they're probably 30-40% of the population. I mean, if you honestly look at it, especially amongst the youth. And you're looking at the reaction these people are having to Kirk's death. It was murder. I mean, that's what it was. Holy crap. These people You know, I watched, and I've talked to, I watched videos from exorcists. All Orthodox priests are exorcists. They're all trained to some degree in exorcism. And in the Catholic Church, there's an actual separate corps of exorcists. And what's interesting is they say actual, real satanic possession is actually very, 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 very rare. Like less than 1% of the people that come and think that they're possessed. However, infernal influence, that's what the demons whisper in your ear and get you to do things without trying to possess you. Because possession is time intensive and energy intensive. This is much easier. Oh, it's very prevalent. And it's prevalent in mass culture. And you look at these people, just look at their eyes. They're not sane. I mean, you do understand it. And all these writers in America, I mean, right of center, oh, we've got all the guns, the left, we'll kick... Guys, you're delusional. If you don't think those people, they may have not served in the military, but if you don't think those people could kill you, look at their eyes. I mean, they are gone. These are whack jobs. But when you're talking about 30% of the population that's a whack job, you've got massive issues. Your society is screwed on a level that you're not even comprehending. You're sitting in your little suburban neighborhood trying to be isolated from reality when you think that, oh, me, I'm a hunter, my buddies are a hunter. Oh, they're all hunters. Oh, yeah, the leftists ain't going to do anything until they toss a grenade into your house, until they blow something up in a neighborhood or in some street. I mean, America is a totally whacked out, screwed place. It ain't about guns. This ain't an issue of guns. This is an issue of mental health. Flat out, guns don't make people insane. Guns don't make people sane. There's massive, massive insanity in the U.S. that's just hard to believe. I mean, there's mass psychosis like most of Europe against Russia. You look at the Swedes, we're afraid of the Russians. When's the last time we fought a war with Sweden? 250 years ago? Yeah, we really want to invade your Gayropia with no-go zones from your imported occupant immigrants. That, the rape capital of Europe's Stockholm. No, we don't care about you. We don't want to invade you. We don't care about you. We really don't give a damn if you fall off the face of the earth or you get rich and happy. We don't care. That's the point of it. We don't love you. We don't hate you. We just don't care about you. The true opposite of love or of hatred is indifference. Russians don't care how Sweden does. It's its own country. We don't want any part of... We don't want most of Europe. For God's sakes, we don't want most of Europe. Well, the only parts of Europe we want are national territories, historical territories, which happen to be Central and Eastern Ukraine. That's it. We don't want Western Ukraine. We don't want Poland. We don't want any of you. If most of you fall off the face of the earth tomorrow, screw you. If you become stinking rich and live like gods, screw you. We don't care. That's the whole point of it. We have our own country. We have a gigantic country. We want our historical land back. And after that, we don't care. You don't want to trade with us? Fine. We don't want to trade with you. Most Russians don't anymore because most Russians are very, they saw the masks come off. But the point is, you get this mass psychosis. But internally, people can still be normal even if they're all suffering from mass psychosis. The people in the U.S., and not only in the U.S., are not normal. You got the young Ukrainian girl that got killed. By the way, if you want to understand the difference between Russians and Hachols, let me explain to you. That poor young 21-year-old Ukrainian blonde girl that got stabbed in the neck and bled out. And he got her vein. He didn't get her artery. She would have been unconscious in about 10, 15 seconds. Charlie. He got her in the vein, so she had a couple minutes where she was bleeding out. I don't know one Russian that was happy about that. Everyone that's seen that or knows about that, they're all sad. They all express their condolences and their outrage. She was Ukrainian, but to us, Ukrainians are us anyways. And if she was Polish, it would have been the same thing. If she was British, it would have been the same thing. But Ukrainian was even closer. Nobody was celebrating her death. Nobody. I don't know anybody like that. I'm sure there's some 1% or 0.5% out there that are like that. There always are a few like that. Probably much less than even 0.5%. But Russians don't celebrate that. That is a tragedy. And the bigger tragedy is 4 people sat around her Yeah, they were all black, and she was this blonde girl. 4 people sat around her, and they turned away from her as she's bleeding out. Nobody went to help her. Nobody. That one bitch, I don't have any other words for her. That was sitting across from her, just turned away from her and got into her phone so she wouldn't see her bleeding out. Those aren't human beings. I don't care if they're black, white, purple, or what. Anybody acts that way, they're not human beings, they're animals. But that's part of American society. It's part of the West. And by the way, the Hohols, the difference between Russia and the Hohols. Charlie Kirk died. Go look at the Ukrainian sites. Go look at the Ukrainian sites on X. Go look at the Ukrainian sites on Facebook or Instagram. They're all friggin' celebrating because he dared to question Ukraine. He dared to question the funding for it. Oh, they're all celebrating. They're all having a field day. That. Just like the leftist liberals in the U.S. They're all having a massive field day. These are all sick friggin' people, if you can still call them people. And I'll tell you this, they're a short, I don't know if you want to call a civil war, but there's going to be something. The U.S. is lost. Whether it was, to a degree, this was engineered that way. Because I remember the U.S. in the 80s and the 90s. This was very much so engineered that way. And I remember in the 2000s, I left in 2010. I spent a block in the middle of all that in the late 90s, early 2000s outside the U.S. But overall, you can see the degradation in education and everything else. You can't say this wasn't engineered because people have to be so insanely stupid at the top to not understand what they're creating to do this accidentally. All of these policies. And the Brits and all others, they're not that far behind. But the British seem to be, even the British, look, you've got the British that are nativists putting up the British flag, and you get these liberals ripping the flags down because they're offensive. Your national flag is offensive to you. Oh, but they're allowing people to put up Pakistani flags, whatever other flags. Dude, you are so gone at that point. You are so friggin' lost, and your society's so screwed. It all depends, of course, what percentage of that is. But considering you've got basically an occupation in the UK, plus the liberals or the Queaslings, the modern Queaslings. If you don't know what a word Queasling look up the Prime Minister of Norway under occupation, German occupation, whose last name was Queasling. That's where the word came from. So you're looking at, so UK maybe could still be saved, or maybe not. US is so screwed it's beyond all recognition. And this murder of Charlie Kirk, a guy that just wanted to have a conversation. Literally. He wasn't out there beating anyone. He wasn't in big protests going, put all the leftists in jail or blah, blah, blah. He was putting out, abortion's evil. Or abortion's wrong. Prove me wrong. And the fact that these semi-humans, I don't want to say subhumans, but semi-conscious things that are masquerading as a human being, they couldn't beat him in words. So they had to shut him down. And the only way they know how to shut someone down, because they can't do it in logic and they can't do it with words, is to murder him. Let's put it what it is. Whether or not he was actually murdered by this guy that is now subject number one, or it was something else, is a big question, because he was afraid of the Israelis, because he started criticizing them. There are other issues. But either way, whether it was the Israelis, whether it was a lone gunman, all these lone gunmen, whether it was a deep state US, whether it was Ukrainians, the reaction in about a third of the American population is off the charts of humanity. These people are insane. These people are so friggin' insane. And the only thing I can say to anybody that wants a normal life, you either get to fight for it right now, or I would be packing my bags and moving to Russia. It's your only real two choices. Because if you think hunkering down and burying your head in the sand is going to change anything, your kids will be those people. Because they will make your kids into those people. So there's your one of two choices. All right, God bless. 10,000 things to do today. And this was only one of them. God bless. You know, prayers to Kirk's family and every other family has now suffered and suffers every day from what these globalists and these wacko woke nut jobs that are their foot soldiers do around the world. Just recently, NATO, via their proxy Ukraine, because this is NATO officers, were shooting just barrage after barrage of missiles into Donetsk. 22-something people killed. Civilians, of course, dozens injured. Storm Shadow missiles. Congratulations, Britons. Their blood is on your hands. Scalp missiles. Congratulations, French. Their blood is on your hands. HIMARS systems. Congratulations, Americans. Their blood is on your hands. Murdered. You know, Russia can send in 300-400 drones and missiles and strikes, and 1-2 people get killed. And usually those people killed are either in the wrong place at the wrong time, or they're killed by interceptor missiles falling, or whatever is falling on top of them, not because they were targeted. And here you go. These people were targeted. So there. That's the world we live in. God bless. Cheers.